Hello everyone, Ace here, and today's video is something of a follow-up on the whole Female Custodes situation with regards to Warhammer 40K, because it turns out I became a bit of the news in this situation, because I used such a fitting description of what Games Workshop and far leftist activists in general are trying to do to Warhammer 40K. Specifically, I stated, quote, "Indeed, the villains in this story are the people who support the artistic rape of Warhammer 40K through the forceful insertion of modern political agenda into it against the consent of the fandom at large." And you'll note is far more liked than the responses that I got. Because yes, what I said was absolutely fiery and inflammatory. Even then though, it is a message that people are ultimately resonating with. And despite the attempts from far leftists to try to mock me, it has ultimately only backfired for them, as it helped further spread my tweet, meaning more people saw it and more people continued to like it. So clearly the Streisand effect is starting to kick in here. But wait, there is more. Allow me to also show off some of the other things that far leftists tried to do with regards to this tweet. One enterprising individual, for example, decided to try to cancel me by adding a company they believed I had a sponsorship deal with. Except that was clearly not the case. Now, for those who don't know, I do not take sponsorships as a rule. When it comes to my videos, I do not want there to be a few minutes worth of content that nobody wants to see because it's just an advertisement. So yes, as a rule, I simply do not take sponsorship deals. But still, the fact remains this person tried to cut off a revenue source that they thought I had just because I said something they politically disagreed with. And it wasn't just this person trying to do that kind of nonsense. One individual that I have spoken about in the past, namely Leaky Cheese, decided to take it upon himself to post fabricated evidence that he created to try to frame me. For the record, he's also tried to frame Kibs from the Pickering Bunch with this exact same fabricated evidence, which comes in the form of screenshots of an alt account that he clearly created, saying some things and he responding back to this alt account. Note that his responses are cropped out for the screenshots where he accuses me of owning the account. I simply responded with the uncropped versions of those screenshots to prove that he is just making things up. He also apparently takes issue with the fact that I point out how the National Socialists were historically speaking a bunch of SJWs and far leftists who pushed affirmative action and did a bunch of other far left things, you know, to demonstrate how modern day social justice is an ontologically evil ideology, and he seems to somehow believe I support all this. Yeah, apparently Leaky Cheese's biggest critique of me is that he thinks I'm a progressive, just like him. Now, for those curious, I've already made a lengthy video explaining how the National Socialists, historically speaking, were indeed far leftists. A video that even counters the source that Leaky Cheese tried to use at one point, specifically Adam Tooze, because Adam Tooze thinks that Hitler wasn't a real Nazi because he killed Nazis. No, seriously, that is the actual argument that Adam Tooze presents, if unintentionally. Because Adam Tooze tries to argue that Hitler wasn't a socialist because he killed socialists. So the fact that Hitler killed Nazis means in the mind of Adam Tooze that Hitler wasn't a real Nazi, and that the Holocaust wasn't a product of Nazism because real Nazism has never been tried, according to Adam Tooze. I know I went on a bit of a tangent there, but since Leaky Cheese decides to keep bringing this up, I'm just going to keep pointing out how he is fundamentally wrong, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can also look to economists and historians such as Friedrich Hayek, Götz Eli, and Rainer Ziedelman, who all provide the conclusion that Hitler's National Socialism was indeed a form of socialism. But getting back to the topic at hand, you can see these activists are utilizing some pretty desperate tactics to try to shut me up. This is because me using the term artistic rape to describe what GW and Wokehammer are doing to Warhammer 40K is, as I've said, resonating with the fandom. Yes, like I said, it is absolutely inflammatory in nature. That's part of the whole point. We absolutely need a term that accurately describes the amount of disgust that should be directed towards the sort of people who forcefully insert modern political agenda into pieces of of art. When I talk about criticizing Games Workshop and being a thorn in their side, this is ultimately what I'm talking about, alongside getting 3D printed models, as well as support the homebrew and the modding scene. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some Warhammer activists who decided it would be a great idea to try to do hit pieces on me. After all, like I've said, there's already been cancellation attempts, and even one individual deciding to create fabricated evidence. In fact, one brilliant individual, who is totally a fan of Warhammer 40K, somehow temporarily managed to forget that the Sisters of Silence and Sisters of Battle exist. Until I of course reminded him, at which point he decided it would be a great idea to show off his entire collection of exactly 5 models. Models that, after doing an image search, I quickly found he had because he was a reviewer, meaning he probably didn't even pay for them. And keep in mind, this is the entirety of his collection apparently. So yeah, I would not be surprised at all if I ended up getting a few hit piece articles levied against me over that little tweet I made. However, this situation also became something of a golden opportunity for me to start dropping red pills over the truth about how modern far leftists actually are, such as the fact that the Warhammer community are the same bunch who unironically believe that Slaanesh is an example of trans representation done right. No, really, they unironically believe that Slaanesh is the god of trans people. So of course, once I point out this little facet of far leftism, these activists got very, very salty and tried to say that I was merely cherry picking 1 or 2 examples and that this is not representative of the entire community. So I then pointed out how the Warhammer community unironically believes that Jewish people are all skaven from Warhammer fantasy. And when they accused that of also being a cherry picked example, I then pointed out the time that Extra Credits got 12,000 likes from far leftists for arguing that black people are all orcs from D&D. On reflection, I probably should have also pointed out the fact that so many far leftists have tried to argue that black people are all orcs that they ended up forcing Wizards of the Coast to change the definition of orc, but admittedly that little tidbit slipped my mind. Update. While recording audio for this video, I found a golden opportunity to slip that little red pill in response to one little genius who sees absolutely no issue whatsoever with far leftists arguing that Slaanesh is an example of trans representation done right. What didn't slip my mind were the examples of far leftist organizations, such as for example BLM, openly celebrating and cheering on the terrorist attacks committed by Hamas against Israeli civilians. Because according to far leftists, attempting to genocide an entire group of people is merely decolonization, don't you know? This appears to have struck a nerve and resulted in far leftists engaging in whataboutism fallacies. Nobody ever apparently telling these far leftists that whataboutism fallacies are, at the end of the day, still low-key admissions that yes, Hamas did these things, and yes, the far left absolutely supports the fact that Hamas did these things. But my point is, these are the sorts of things that these, quote, tolerant people, unquote, truly believe. They view black people in such a negative light that they unironically think that they are all orcs from D&D. They view trans people in such a negative light that they unironically think that Slaanesh is an example of trans representation done right. They hate Jewish people so much that not only do they think that they are all skaven, but also actively celebrate terrorist attacks being committed against them. And these are the activists who will accuse you of being a literal National Socialist for such horrific crimes as drinking milk. These are the people that Games Workshop believes are the majority. The ever mythical modern audience that is so vast and numerous in number that it can't even keep Star Wars from failing. And these are also the people that they are choosing to artistically rape Warhammer 40K in order to placate. This is the sort of hatred that Games Workshop is trying to openly support with these changes. With all of that in mind, I hope I've made myself clear as to why exactly the tweet I made became as popular as it did. To move on, I must state that of course I will endeavor to continue to keep my ear to the ground and keep you all informed should any more news come. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.